Subcommittee will come to order. We want to welcome our witnesses here, and we'll get to you in just a minute. Typically what we do is you got to listen to us talk for a few minutes first, kind of the normal procedure. It's got an echo today, doesn't it? If we could have maybe someone check that out. Today's hearing continues the committee's examination of President Obama's green energy agenda that directed $90 billion of taxpayer money in an effort to create a government-engineered green energy utopia. The Department of Energy's loan guarantee program, in particular, is of great concern after the bankruptcies of Solyndra and Beacon Power, and with other taxpayer-funded companies teetering on the brink. Taxpayers have a right to know how and why their money was spent in such poor ways. The committee has uncovered a troubling pattern of questionable projects sponsored by companies with political connections to this administration, receiving billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies. The Obama administration frequently claims that the 1705 Loan Guarantee Program and other stimulus-funded green energy programs create green jobs in America and will develop a strong American green energy sector. In contrast to these optimistic predictions from the administration, at the last hearing before this subcommittee, we heard from 4 loan guarantee recipient companies that were struggling financially, firing workers and halting production despite receiving billions of dollars in taxpayer subsidies. Today's hearing will examine other beneficiaries of the 1705 Loan Guarantee Program, large, successful companies that had plenty of access to capital to fund green energy projects if they thought they were sensible investments, but saw Obama administration programs as an easier and more profitable way to make money with little or no risk to themselves. Today we will hear testimony from the CEOs of NRG Energy, Prologis, Centrix Energy, and Ormat. These companies, none of which can claim to be either small or startups, took over $5 billion in taxpayer loan guarantees and all had ties to either the Obama administration or powerful politicians. The New York Times described the loan guarantee program and other government programs as a, quote, banquet of government subsidies and a windfall for the industry. This profit opportunity wasn't ignored by the companies represented today. David Crane, the CEO of one company here today, described these programs as a once-in-a-generation opportunity. He said, and I quote, "I have never seen anything that I've had to do in my 20 years in the power industry that involved less risk than these projects, and we intend to do as much business as we can get our hands on." The business model of these companies is clear. Sign long-term contracts with utilities that are required by state mandates to purchase renewable energy, and then seek federal government backing to build green energy facilities. In the meantime, use political connections to grease the wheels of the federal government. As Mr. Crane implied, the companies are clear winners. They get all the profit. However, the losers are consumers of electricity all over the country who pay higher prices, and the American taxpayers who bear the risk if the projects fail. This, my friends, is the Obama administration's green energy economics in a nutshell. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. Ultimately, today's hearing gets to the core of the problem with government pretending that it can be a venture capitalist. Businesses benefit not by pleasing their customers, but rather by using their lobbying savvy and political connections to get billions of dollars from the American taxpayers. With that, I would yield to my good friend from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for calling this hearing. I look forward to our witnesses today and to learn more about the Department of Energy's 1705 Loan Guarantee Program and what it has achieved for the American people. But before the witnesses take their oath to provide true and accurate testimony, I want to make sure our congressional record is accurate to the best of our ability. On March 20th, 2012, our Chairman, Darrell Issa, issued a majority staff report alleging that, quote, DOE violated the statutory requirement that projects commence construction by September 30th, 2011, unquote, in approving a loan guarantee for Prologis' project AMP to place solar panels on warehouse roofs in 28 states. Now, accusing a federal agency of breaking the law is a very serious accusation, and it's not made lightly or without, it shouldn't be made lightly or without substantial evidence. The committee has in its possession a report of a September 2nd, 2011 site visit by engineers from DOE and Bank of America's independent contractor, which appears to refute the accuracy of the majority's assertion. Bank of America was the lender applicant on this project. At that time, both Bank of America engineers and DOE engineers confirmed that the commencement of construction requirement had been met. Now, months prior to the issuance of the majority's report, DOE produced to the committee a document drafted by Bank of America's consultant dated September 20, 2011, certifying that the Prologis project had met the statutory requirement for commencement of construction. In addition, a September 21, 2011 document issued by the DOE also indicates in writing that both parties confirmed the commencement of construction. The only evidence that my friends in the majority have cited for concluding that the requirement was not met is an email sent by a lawyer for Bank of America months after these events. We don't know what the email said. We do not know if Bank of America said what the majority attributed to it, or if the majority misunderstood what the Bank of America's attorney wrote, because the majority has not released the email to the public. Despite Bank of America's significant role as the source of both the consultant's report and the email purportedly contradicting it, our chairman has not sent a formal document request to the company, nor did the chairman invite Bank of America here today to explain the bank's role in the 1705 program or the discrepancy between the majority report and the independent consultant's certification. If our chairman still believes that the DOE violated the law, then it is incumbent upon our committee to invite Bank of America to testify and to help us resolve the apparent contradiction in the majority's report. During previous hearings, some of my colleagues across the aisle expressed concern that cronyism was at play in the 1705 program. The majority's witness today, a scholar from the Mercatus Center, points to loans like the one that Goldman Sachs subsidiary Centrix received as the worst kind and inferred that it was a form of cronyism. Now, this committee has not requested documents from Goldman Sachs or invited Goldman Sachs CEO to offer testimony about why it believed its project was a good investment for its balance sheet or for the American taxpayers. Both Bank of America and Goldman Sachs could help this committee understand the projects and the process that our chairman has condemned. Both are substantial campaign contributors with very deep pockets. Who else could shed better light on whether Federal loan guarantees were necessary or if politics was inappropriately at play? Curiously, the committee has not inquired with them, and that's too bad. It's like we're having a party here and the main guests who should be here aren't present. A review of campaign finance records would reveal that there are donors to political causes who are just waiting for an opportunity to be heard from. Bank of America, for instance, made over $555,000 in contributions to my friends in the Republican Party's PAC and individuals, including several members of this committee. Now, I'm not saying this to impugn anyone, because I know the members of this committee, and they're all honest people. But we have to understand the pall that's cast over the proceedings when you have Bank of America and you have Goldman Sachs being excluded from this kind of discussion. So, I haven't seen the evidence of the favoritism that the majority has alleged in a Federal program supporting renewable energy technologies, but I have noticed the absence of several key players from this investigation, and I think that we need to address that. Just a month ago, Chairman Issa said he would invite his friend, former Governor Schwarzenegger, to testify at a future hearing. I hope that he will do so, and that he will extend similar invitations to Governor Brewer of Arizona and former Governor Gibbons of Nevada, who I had the pleasure of serving with in this Congress. Today continues our important conversation about the value of the DOE's 1705 loan guarantee program to America's future economic stability and energy security. Going forward, I hope that we can invite the other essential parties into this in this program to hear their opinions. I yield back, and I thank the gentleman.
I thank the gentleman for his statement. I would ask unanimous consent that the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney, be able to sit in on the committee and participate in it by asking questions without objection. And I would also point out to my good friend from Ohio that we do have with us the CEO of a wholly owned subsidiary of Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs does have a presence in front of this committee today, and we'll be hearing from Mr. Mancini in just a few minutes.
If my friend would yield briefly. I think we, with all due respect to the witness who is appearing here, who is part of a wholly owned subsidiary of Goldman Sachs, I think that it would be ever more instructive to have the CEO of Goldman Sachs here to explain the role of Goldman Sachs in these kind of programs. So I thank the gentleman, though, for pointing that out.
Okay, we want to introduce our panel and get right to our witnesses today. We have with us Mr. David Crane, the President and CEO of NRG Energy, Mr. Walter Rakowicz, got that right? Good. Is the CEO, co-CEO, excuse me, of Prologis. Mr. Robert Mancini is the CEO of Centrix Energy. And we have with us Ms. Judith Branicki, who is the CEO and Director of Ormat Technologies, and Dr. DeRugi, who is the Senior Research Fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. We want to welcome you all here. It's the practice of this committee just to swear you in, so if you just stand up and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Let the record show that everyone answered in the affirmative, and we will move down the line. You all know how this works. You get 5 minutes, more or less. Keep it close there if you can. You've got the light system there in front of you. You can see. And Mr. Crane, we will start with you and go right down the list, and we'll get to questions.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Kucinich, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. You've already introduced myself, so I won't do that. Let me introduce NRG. We're a Fortune 300 company with more than 25,000 megawatts of coal, nuclear, gas, wind, and solar generation, which is enough to power more than 20 million homes. We also own several retail electricity businesses that together serve more than 2 million customers in Texas and several northeastern states. Important to our discussion today is NRG is not a rate-based utility. Our shareholders bear 100% of the risks of our capital investments and of the success of our operations, which is in stark contrast to rate-based utilities, which tend to socialize the risk of their capital projects among the ratepayers of their state. I ask that my written testimony be included in the record. NRG currently owns a majority interest in 3 solar projects that have received loan guarantees under Section 1705, and pictures of these 3 projects taken very recently are all up here next to me. I'm pleased to report to you on the progress of these projects through the critical construction phase, because that's typically the highest risk phase in the life of any power generation asset. We are also involved in the ownership of a 4th Section 1705 rooftop solar project, commonly called Project AMP, together with our partner Prologis, but to date there have been no drawdowns on the Project AMP loan, so there's no progress for me to report on. So let me go back to the 3 projects which are under construction. We own a 50% interest in the 392-megawatt Ivanpah project in San Bernardino County, California, which is the picture on your left, my right. Ivanpah utilizes an Israeli-American concentrated solar power technology developed by BrightSource, a California-headquartered company. Ivanpah, when it's completed in 2014, will be the largest concentrated solar project in the world. All the electricity generated by Ivanpah will be sold under a series of long-term power purchase agreements to Pacific Gas and Electric, which is an A3-rated investor-owned utility, or to Southern California Edison, which is also an A3-rated investor-owned utility. Ivanpah, which is located on the California-Nevada border about 45 miles south of Las Vegas, is being constructed by Bechtel Corporation, the legendary San Francisco-based construction company that oversaw the construction of the Hoover Dam and hundreds of American infrastructure projects since. Construction at Ivanpah began in October of 2010, and as of today, the project is on schedule. We expect to be making steam with Unit 1 in November this year, and I'm pleased to report that Ivanpah is not only on schedule, but remains under budget as well. Secondly, we own a 100% stake in the 250-megawatt California Valley Solar Ranch project near San Luis Obispo, California, which utilizes SunPower's photovoltaic technology. The CVSR project, as is known, also benefits from a 25-year offtake agreement with PG&E and is also being constructed by the Bechtel Corporation. The 25-megawatt first phase of this project will be online in September with final completion in late 2013. I'm pleased to report to you that CVSR is ahead of schedule and under budget. And CVSR is this project on the far side. Finally, we own a 51% stake in the 290-megawatt Agua Caliente solar project near Yuma, Arizona, which is being built by First Solar and utilizing their own solar module technology, with the power generated by this facility also sold under long-term contract to Pacific Gas and Electric. Agua Caliente, when complete, will be the largest solar photovoltaic project in the world, and I'm very pleased to report to you that halfway through this scheduled construction period, Agua Caliente already has achieved the distinction of being the largest solar plant operating in North America, delivering almost 200 megawatts of power into the grid. As such, Agua Caliente is so far ahead of schedule that we have had to petition the Department of Energy to allow us to complete the project sooner than was originally intended. In summary, Mr. Chairman, all of us at NRG recognize and respect this committee's focus on the taxpayer funds being deployed to construct these projects and your intense interest in seeing those funds paid back to the government with interest. I am pleased to report to you that all three of these projects are well on track and that nothing has occurred which causes me to have particular concern that the taxpayer funds invested in these projects is at risk of non-payment or even of late payment. Having said that, there are nearly 5,000 people that work at NRG who are focused on construction support and management of these projects, and we will not rest and will remain ever vigilant until this money is in fact repaid. And you see, the reason for this is that all three of these projects are being funded not only by DOE loan guarantees and federal financing bank loans, but with a considerable amount of equity capital provided by NRG and our partners in the respective projects. In total, NRG itself has committed over $1 billion of its shareholder capital to these three projects, a considerable sum which represents about 30% of our market capitalization. Since our capital is invested in equity, it's lower in the priority of repayment than the loans provided by the Federal Government. In blunt terms, we don't get paid unless the government has been repaid. And with over $1 billion committed, you can rest assured that we are very highly motivated to making sure that the government is repaid. Thank you, and I look forward to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Crane. When you said in the New York Times that it's filling the desert with panels, we can see that from those visuals, certainly there. Mr. Rakowicz, you are now recognized for your 5 minutes.
Is it on? There we go. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Kucinich, and members of the subcommittee. Good morning. My name is Walter Rakowicz, and I'm the Co-Chief Executive Officer of Prologis. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk to you about our company and our involvement with the Department of Energy's 1705 Loan Guarantee Program. For over 20 years, Prologis has been in the business of developing industrial real estate. We offer our customers approximately 500 million square feet of distribution space for lease in over 20 countries. About 75% of our properties support local communities in the United States. As a result, Prologis is a different sort of company from the others that have participated in the Loan Guarantee Program. Our corporate mission includes a focus on sustainability, which we believe provides a triple benefit. First, employee well-being. Second, environmental stewardship. And third, cost-effective facilities for our customers. And to that end, we have begun to utilize the hundreds of millions of square feet of rooftops in our portfolio for the installation of photovoltaic systems. These rooftops face the sun and are directly adjacent to the electrical grid. Standing alone, they generate no additional benefit. With rooftop solar, however, they provide a renewable source of power for the communities where our buildings are located, while providing an additional revenue stream to our shareholders. Going back to as early as 2006, we began having conversations with different solar panel manufacturers and financing sources about the potential for future rooftop solar installations. And since that time, we've installed 78 megawatts of solar on about 18 million square feet of rooftops. In January 2010, we put out a tender seeking a solar EPC finance partner to lease our roofs and respond to a potential California utility request for proposal. One responded to our tender was Solyndra, who identified Bank of America Merrill Lynch as their financial partner. We ultimately selected Solyndra Bank of America proposal in February 2010, and we jointly responded to the utility RFP. That utility selected us in July 2010 to provide them with solar power, a project which became known as Project Photon. In November 2010, we partnered with Bank of America to apply for a DOE loan guarantee to support a much larger nationally scaled program, which we called Prologis AMP. While we had completed smaller scale solar rooftop installation projects before, mostly financed by utilities, a larger nationally scaled project required a different approach. We applied for the loan guarantee to reduce the cost of our project financing, which would make our rooftop solar project more economical. Working with Bank of America as our lender and NRG Energy as our equity partner, we sought to develop a multi-year, multi-phase project that would generate power for the grid in up to 28 states. Project Photon, which had been progressing, was anticipated to be the first phase of Project AMP. In July 2011, after receiving a conditional commitment from the DOE, we began construction work on the rooftops of 15 buildings in Southern California at a cost to Prologis of just over $8 million. In September 2011, Solyndra declared bankruptcy. This created a considerable challenge as it occurred when we were in the final stages of closing our loan guarantee. After reviewing Solyndra's circumstances, we determined that there was an insufficient ability on Solyndra's part to provide the required solar module services and warranties. As a result, we proactively informed our partners and the DOE that we would not use Solyndra technology for Phase 1. Now, despite this challenge to the completion of Phase 1, we believed that it would not impede our ability to develop Project AMP as a whole over the 4-year term of the project. We are continuing to this day to pursue power purchase agreements for Project AMP, including the use of the sites on which we had already spent millions of dollars. Under the terms of our loan agreement, each future phase of Project AMP will entail a specific power purchase agreement, will be funded separately, and must be approved in each instance by Bank of America and the DOE. To date, we have not yet sought or received any government loan guarantees under this arrangement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to speak to this committee about Prologis. We believe that our core assets in the industrial real estate area can be effectively utilized to generate significant solar energy output and thereby contribute to the goal of energy independence. I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rakowicz. Mr. Mancini, you're up for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Kucinich, and members of the subcommittee, good morning. My name is Robert Mancini, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Cogentrix. Cogentrix is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Goldman Sachs Group, and I am also a Managing Director in the Commodities Business Unit of that firm. Thank you for the opportunity to appear this morning and speak to you about Cogentrix Energy and our Alamosa solar generating plant in Colorado. Cogentrix Energy is an independent power producer that has been in the business of developing, constructing, owning, and operating power generation facilities since 1983. We currently employ more than 200 full-time employees that work at our headquarters in Charlotte, North Carolina, as well as our power generating facilities located in Colorado, Virginia, Florida, and California. I'm here today to speak with you about our Alamosa solar project, but Cogentrix is not just in the renewable energy business. On the contrary, the majority of Cogentrix's history has been focused on conventional power projects throughout the United States that have included primarily natural gas and coal-fired facilities. In total, we have developed power generation facilities across the country with a combined generating capacity of over 5,000 megawatts of electric power, which is enough to power approximately 2 million homes. Currently, we are particularly focused on the continued development of natural gas-fired generation, as we believe that natural gas will undoubtedly play an increasing role in the U.S. electric generation market. As an example, we are presently working on the development of 100 megawatts of gas-fired generation in the San Diego, California area. So while projects like Alamosa are important, we believe that represents only one part of what we do to address our country's energy needs. The Alamosa solar generating plant is presently one of the largest concentrating photovoltaic electric power generation facilities in the world. It's located in Colorado. It began commercial operation on April 1st of this year. It has been designed to produce approximately 30 megawatts of solar power under a 20-year power purchase agreement with the Public Service Company of Colorado. The technology deployed in the Alamosa project was developed as part of the U.S. space program and had been deployed in that context for several years. But the Alamosa project represents one of its first utility-scale applications. Importantly, in the process of our development and construction of Alamosa, we sourced more than 80% of the components from within the United States. Centrix began development of the Alamosa project in 2009 in response to a request for a proposal from the Public Service Company of Colorado, and by June of 2010, we had signed a power purchase agreement with them for 20 years. The Alamosa project involves significant expenditures. In this case, there are approximately $140 million of hard costs. An independent power development cannot fund all these costs through its own equity contributions and remain competitive and profitable. Typically, developers fund a portion of the total project cost from their own equity and obtain limited recourse financing from third-party lenders for the balance. However, projects such as the one developed in the Alamosa project present a special challenge, because while the technology of the project is proven in one context, as previously mentioned, has not been deployed on a commercial scale. Lenders generally do not provide cost-effective project financing until they know that a technology is commercially viable, and therefore, Cogentrix's willingness to pursue a project based on the CPV technology was predicated on the ability to source alternative forms of debt financing. After unsuccessful attempts at attracting private debt capital, it was only through the 1705 loan program that Cogentrix was able to obtain the debt that was cost-effective enough to allow us to move forward with the project. Now, we at Cogentrix committed approximately $115 million in equity and equity guarantees, and we received just under $90 million in debt financing under the DOE loan program. We began this process of application with the DOE in February 2010 and signed the loan agreement guarantee on September 2, 2011. To date, we've drawn approximately $71 million against the $90 million federal loan that was approved. The project reached commercial operation on time. We expect it to be completed under budget, and the final loan amount will be about $86.5 million. At present, the project is generating energy in compliance with the requirements of our power purchase agreement, and we're projecting that the project revenues will be more than enough to repay the DOE loan in a timely manner. Mr. Chairman, Cogentrix has a long history of developing and operating power plants employing a variety of traditional and renewable energy technologies. We're proud of the success that we've achieved thus far in the Alamosa project, and we look forward to continuing to advance both the renewable and conventional energy portions of our business. I welcome any questions the committee may have. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mancini, thank you. Ms. Brennecke.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Kucinich, and members of the subcommittee. My name is Dita Brennecke, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Ormat Technologies, Inc., a New York Stock Exchange-listed company. Ormat, which has been headquartered in Nevada since 1984, is the only vertically integrated company primarily engaged in the geothermal power business. We design, develop, own, and operate power plants around the world using our state-of-the-art technology. Ormat was founded in 1965, and we have more than 4 decades of experience in the development of environmentally sound power. We currently own and operate power plants totaling 586 megawatts around the world, with 470 megawatts in the United States, Western United States. We employ over 1,000 people worldwide, with more than 500 employees domestically. I appreciate the opportunity to testify here today about our business and the Department of Energy's 1705 Loan Guarantee Program. Ormat participated not only in the current Department of Energy Loan Guarantee Program, but also with its predecessor program almost 30 years ago. In the 1980s, Ormat obtained a $50 million loan guarantee for our Mesa geothermal project. At that time, the DOE loan guarantee program was a needed catalyst to encourage commercial lenders to participate in such new projects. And additional geothermal plants, totaling hundreds of megawatts of capacity, followed. That project paved the way for the growth of the geothermal industry in the United States and helped the financial community on the path to accepting the viability of geothermal energy projects. In July 2010, John Hancock Life Insurance Company submitted an application to the DOE to participate in the current 1705 loan guarantee program, along with our subsidiary. The proposed project, known as OFC2, involved the portfolio of 3 different geothermal power facilities in the state of Nevada: Tuscarora, McGuinness, and Jersey Valley. All 3 facilities would provide power pursuant to a 20-year power purchase agreement with Nevada Power Company using our proprietary technology. That technology has been installed and used in multiple geothermal power plants and our electricity generating system around the world. The project was designed to proceed in 2 stages, which upon completion would generate a combined total of up to 120 megawatts of clean power. We were offered a conditional commitment from the DOE for our partial guarantee just under a year later in June 2011. We believe that this project is a strong fit with the objectives of the 1705 program. Economic condition at the time of our application made it difficult to secure commercial debt to develop these 3 facilities. The DOE loan guarantee enabled us to deploy more plants and create more jobs than we would have been able to achieve without it. The 2-phase portfolio approach also mitigated the risk of the investment, as its overall success did not hinge entirely on the success of one facility. A total of up to $350 million in debt financing has been approved by our financial partner, John Hancock. Our first draw on the guaranteed fund occurred in October 2011 of approximately $151 million, which is only a portion of the total budget for the projects. Indeed, as of the second quarter of 2010, before our application was submitted to the DOE, the project had been funded by Ormat in the amount of $117 million. In short, we have dedicated substantial equity to the project and are committed to its success. I am pleased to report that the Tuscarora facility has already reached commercial operation, and we expect the McGuinness facility to reach that milestone very soon. Mr. Chairman, Ormat had been in the business of developing geothermal power for close to 30 years. Our deep experience enabled us to propose a solid commercial renewable energy power project to the Department of Energy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. I welcome any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Ms. Bernicki. Doctor, you're recognized.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Kucinich, member of this committee, it's an honor to appear before you today to talk about the Department of Energy Loan Guarantee Program. My name is Véronique de Rugy. I'm a senior research fellow at the Mercatus Center at George Mason University, where I study tax and budget issues. Advocates for renewable energy are right to be outraged by the large amount of subsidies going to fossil fuels. Yet they're wrong to think that the answer is more subsidies for a form of energy that they approve of. The Department of Energy's 1705 Loan Guarantee Program is a cornerstone of the Department of Energy and the U.S. energy policy. The policy is often justified on 2 grounds. First, advocates argue that renewable energy companies do not have access to sufficient credit to support new projects. Second, the Department of Energy argues that by investing in green technology, it would create up to 5 million green jobs. So how do these claims stand up to scrutiny? Looking at the flow of 1705 loan program, we find first that nearly 19% of a 1705 loans went to subsidize projects that were backed by large companies such as NRG Energy, or even the financial giant Goldman Sachs. In practice, it is hard to argue that these companies would have had a hard time having access to capital to fund projects that would have been viable. Second, according to the Department of Energy's data, under 1705, $16 billion in loans were guaranteed and 2,388 permanent green jobs were created. That means that for every $6.7 million in taxpayer exposure, one job was created. These numbers dismiss this loan program as an effective job program. But while the data speaks for itself, the real problem with the 1705 loan program lies below these numbers. It even goes beyond the recent waste of $538 million of taxpayers' money following the failure of Solyndra. Solyndra is a symptom of more fundamental problems that make loan guarantee programs in general, and DOE's loan guarantee program in particular, a bad deal for taxpayers. Such programs suffer from three main problems. First, every loan guarantee program transfers the risk from lenders to taxpayers, creating a moral hazard problem. Because the loan amount is guaranteed, banks have less incentive to evaluate applicants thoroughly or apply proper oversight. The same is true for the company that borrows the money. Also, these programs privatize gains and socialize losses. In other words, taxpayers bear the risk of the project, but the companies and the bank that receive the guarantee get all the upside. Second, every loan guarantee gives lenders an incentive to shift resources to government-supported projects and away from unsupported ones, regardless of the merit of the project. This has a cascading effect. For instance, when the government subsidizes a company, that company becomes a relatively safe asset in the eyes of other investors. However, safety in the market often signals low return on investment, and it's likely to scare away venture capitalists, and that means lower rate of innovation. But it gets worse. The data shows that non-venture capitalist private investors tend to congregate towards the safety provided by the government guarantee project. And that too takes resources away from unsubsidized project towards subsidized project. And these unsubsidized projects, they may have actually a better probability of surviving and a better business plan absent the subsidy. And make no mistake, this actually can hurt green energy production, as this trade-off can actually take place within the green energy industry. Third, at their worst, every loan guarantee introduces political incentive into business decision, creating the condition for businesses to seek financial rewards by pleasing political interests rather than customers. It is called crony capitalism. It's a bipartisan problem, and it entails real economic cost. So whatever the intention that motivates the program, the evidence is clear. It's just not working. The 1705 loan program does expose taxpayers to Solyndra-like waste, but more concern are the systematic distortions it introduces into the market and the unintended consequences those may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. We appreciate that fine testimony. I'm going to yield first to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly, for 5 minutes of questioning.
And I thank the Chairman. I thank you all for being here. And I know that sometimes this seems like an exercise in futility because there's other things you'd like to be doing. But our job is to protect the taxpayers. And being a small business person, I've actually navigated trying to borrow money. Mr. Crane, you were talking about the money that you were able to borrow through the 1705. And you said this is a loan that's made. What's the interest rate in the loan?
I don't know what the interest rate is, but it's very low by standards. I mean, it's set by the Federal Government, so I think...
Well, I mean, sure, but wait a minute. You have an idea.
Well, I think it's like the Fed fund rate plus 50 basis points or something. It's a very low...
Well, I mean, for the average American, what would that mean? If he went to the bank and borrowed this money, what interest rate would he be paying?
What would the average American be
Well,
paying?
no, in average terms, that the average American would understand, because I understand you guys make really good investments. I understand that you're entitled to a great return on your investment, but you know what? Not at the expense of the taxpayers. The truth of the matter is these are loans at probably almost 0%, right?
Well, I think they're very low interest rates, but the government sets that loan.
No, I understand that, but that's why you go after it.
Well, we went after it and also just because the size of the loan.
Well, I understand all that. I understand, but you understand. No, listen, let me tell you, because I watch everybody rolling their eyes about, and Mrs. DeRiggi's testifying about, oh, here we go again, poor taxpayers. Truth of the matter is, you can't borrow this money in the open market for the money, for the price that the government's charging you. That's a fact of the matter, okay? Let's just go beyond it. Let me ask you something, because I want you all sitting there. Okay, I've also had to go out and borrow money. When you borrow money, there's something basically out there. It's called the 5 C's. It's character, capacity, capital, collateral, and conditions. You guys got pretty good character. You guys got pretty good capacity. You have capital, collateral. You got everything. You got Goldman Sachs. You even got Warren Buffett owning 49% of one of the companies. So you have pretty good guys that you want to lend the money to. The government wants to lend the money to. The only thing is, there's no return for the American taxpayer. It's an absolutely ridiculous thing. It's free money. It's absolutely free money that goes out to these companies. Now, I don't blame you for going after it. Don't misunderstand me. Don't misunderstand me. Anybody in business would love to have that opportunity. So when you see that out there, it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I can borrow this money at this rate. I could do it myself, but I can get it for almost nothing. That's what I'm going after. I'm going after that brass ring or that gold ring. You didn't even need to capitalize it through this program. You could have capitalized it yourself. The truth of the matter is, it's just that the money was so cheap, you had to go after it. That's not a condemnation. That's a smart business move. Not a good business move for the American taxpayer, but a good business move for those of us in business who could borrow money at a very low rate. Now, I'm trying to imagine this feeding frenzy when this money was put out there. Who came after this money? And the numbers of people that came after this money, I think it's what, it's $15 billion that was put out there? I think that's what the number is. So my question then comes down to, what did the American taxpayer invest in? We have a slide that shows credit ratings. Can we put the slide up? Does anybody have access to that? This is incredible because, you know, when you're in school, an A is a really good score. A B is a pretty good score. I mean, I lived on Bs. C's, my parents weren't too happy about, but Bs were good. But the truth of the matter is, a B is a high risk. It's a junk grade. Now, American taxpayers have been told, well, you know, we risked some of your money, but we risked it because, you know what, we had to take that gamble. So when I look at this, I look at the credit ratings, and so we're telling people, we made good investments for you, and there's a good ROI on this. But the truth of the matter is, most of the money went to junk grade opportunities, right? Now, that brings me down to, so how do you navigate that territory? How do you be the guys that win the money? So there has to be a process. And I think there's, I was looking at some GAO numbers. There's 460 applications to the program. I think 25 got the money. About 7% of the people that applied got the money. My question is, what did those people do to get that money? Ms. Bronke, who is Paul Thompson?
Paul Thompson is working in our business development department.
And so who does he work for?
Who is he working for?
Yes.
In the company?
Yes. He's a lobbyist for your firm, right?
I don't know. I wouldn't characterize.
Okay, well, he is a lobbyist for your firm. Let me ask you this. Who, before Thompson worked for you, who did he work for?
Who did he work before he worked for us?
Yes.
I don't know if...
well, it was Harry Reid.
I don't know.
Can we play an ad? I want you to see something. This may refresh your memory. Can we have there's a little thing I want to show that we can maybe put up. This will help you remember this.
You know, as you drive along I-80 and you see the steam coming up from the ground, it may not look like much, but it's geothermal energy. Geothermal could mean over 16,000 construction jobs in Nevada. Harry Reid saw the potential for geothermal before just about anybody else.
Yeah, Harry Reid got over $144 million for 25.
Jobs, it's Nevada Energy. Senator Reid is making that happen.
Okay. So Harry Reid
I'm Harry Reid, and I approve this message.
Yes, I'm sure he does. You go through this, and here's my point. Here's my point. There's a way to navigate these waters. When only 7% of the applicants actually get the prize, you got to wonder, as an average American sitting in my home, sitting in my business, how did these guys get there and all the rest didn't? And we find out that almost every single one of these is tied in some way to the administration. So there's a way to navigate the waters. There's a way to be successful. And the idea is you better be tied into somebody who's influential. Now, Mr. Thompson right now is busy, and I know that Harry Reid visits Ormat facilities. I visit a lot of facilities throughout western Pennsylvania, too, because I want to know what's going on. But I got to tell you, the American people are starting to wonder, billions and billions and billions of dollars invested by a government that picks winners and losers, and a lot of it based on highly suspect ways of how do you get there. So I wish I had more time. This is an interesting subject, and I know that people don't want to hear about this, but at the end of the day, people want to know where their money went and how did it get there. This is a difficult map to navigate, and you know that, and I know that. But free money is free money. This feeding frenzy had to be phenomenal, and when you guys got that information, it'd be, wow, man, let's get our share. It's just amazing to me who got their share and how they got their share. And it's the old story. If you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. And I'll tell you what, somebody got to the table in a hurry and got a bigger share of the pie than other people. And who funded it all? Hardworking American taxpayers. And they deserve to know how that worked out and how that happened.
I thank the gentleman. We'll come for a second round. The gentleman can get more time.
I hope so.
Yield now to the ranking member, my good friend from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich.
First of all, I want to say that I want to associate myself with the concerns that my friend Mr. Kelly has expressed. But, you know, bottom line, we're talking about power and money, how people get to the table. And I don't think it has anything to do with Democrat or Republicans. For example, Mr. Thompson, who we're talking about here, if I'm correct, just to show his bipartisan nature, he was able to be appointed as involved in the transition for then Governor Gibbons for energy or natural resources issues. So, you know, the fact of the matter is we can go, and I have gone into who's contributed to whom. People are contributing to Democrats and Republicans alike. It's part of the problem with this process. These men and women who sit on these committees are good people. People who serve in Congress are good people. The system is rotten. It's up for sale. And the unfortunate assumption that, or the assumption that occurs about this unfortunate nexus between money and power is, you know, it's inarguable. The only question is, what about these programs? Now, I also want to...
Gentleman, yield for one.
Oh, of course.
I would just point out that I think that was the point that the doctor made, that this is not
I don't disagree with
a one-party problem. This is a problem when you have government handing out, as Mr. Kelly pointed out,
the issue of moral hazard is there. You know, I agree with that. Now, also, just to make the point, there are some of my friends from the other side of the aisle who signed a letter, actually an urgent letter to Secretary Salazar of Interior, saying, look, let's get these solar programs moving. Unanimous consent, I'd like to put that in the record. So there's bipartisan support for the programs, but there's a partisan debate over who got what and why. Now, we also, another little item that I'd like to clarify here that I want to ask unanimous consent. Goldman Sachs. Now, we know we've got a wholly owned subsidiary of Goldman Sachs testifying, but Goldman Sachs' involvement goes way beyond this subsidiary. In fact, Goldman Sachs stands behind several of the loan guarantees granted by DOE, which don't involve this subsidiary here today. And I want to insert into the record this article from the New York Times, which states that Goldman Sachs was also involved in the Desert Sunlight Solar Farm, getting a guarantee of $1.46 billion without objection.
Without objection. Order.
So several very large companies participated in projects that received DOE loan guarantees. And unfortunately, the committee's investigation has not asked many of them about their involvement. Now, Mr. Mancini, it is my understanding your company Cogentrix is a wholly owned subsidiary of Goldman Sachs Group. Given that fact, what was Goldman Sachs' involvement in Cogentrix' 1705 project in Alamosa, Colorado?
Congressman Kucinich, to answer that question, I think you have to understand how we structured this project. We structured this project at Cogentrix like we would any other project financing for the construction of a power project.
What was their involvement?
So the involvement of Goldman Sachs really was derivative to the whole process. If I could just explain. First, at the Cogentrix level, the operating level, we'd have to go out and secure and negotiate a power purchase agreement with an off-taker, a utility in this case, for the purchase of the power. The next thing we would do would be to select an equipment provider and a construction manager, and then, and only then, would we go out and try to find the financing package that would make this project viable.
So what was Goldman Sachs' involvement?
So Goldman Sachs provided equity capital to Cogentrix to make $116 million of commitments to this project. We are, in fact, the project leading financier, not the government.
Mr. Mancini, thank you. Mr. Rakowitz, it is my understanding your company is mainly comprised of warehousing operations throughout the world, and that Project AMP deals with placing solar panels on your roofs. I understand that Bank of America played a very significant part in putting this deal together. What is Bank of America's involvement in this project?
Congressman, Bank of America would be the lender to the extent that we roll out the solar on these roofs. Bank of America would be the lender.
To what extent, sir?
Well, to the extent of roughly 80% of the project cost.
And how much is that?
It's hard to say. The maximum amount of the program is $2.6 billion.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, thank you. Mr. Mancini and Mr. Rakowitz, your companies have both been the subject of document requests from this committee, and of course, you're both requested to testify here. Thank you for being here. Now, to your knowledge, Mr. Mancini, was your parent company, Goldman Sachs, ever given a document request or an invitation to testify to your knowledge? Do you have any idea?
To my personal knowledge, I do not know.
How about you, Mr. Rakowitz? To your knowledge, was the primary deal maker and financier behind your project Bank of America ever sent document requests, do you know?
Not to my knowledge. Well, document requests, I don't know.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that, I think that this committee could be ever more effective in its work if we were to have Goldman Sachs and Bank of America here to answer questions about their involvement, since they stand behind it. I mean, these are, in the scheme of things, these are small companies in the scheme of things. In terms of Goldman Sachs and Bank of America, they're at the highest level. And I think if we were able to bring them forward, the kind of questions that Mr. Kelly has raised, it would be an opportunity for us to really go deep and to find out what's happening, and also to go into the interplay of the politics and the contributions.
I appreciate that from the ranking member. We now yield to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the Chairman and the Ranking Member for the courtesy of allowing me to participate today. I want to talk about something different for a few minutes and then follow up on some of the things that Mr. Kelly and Mr. Kucinich were raising. I want to deal first with the issue that Mr. Ruge mentioned, which was the true impact, the true stimulative impact of these programs. As I sat and I listened to you folks testify, one of the things that became readily apparent that I want to press on a little bit is whether or not these projects would have been done anyway. Mr. Rakowitz, you said you started this in 2006. You started doing this program, and in fact have actually had put some of these photovoltaic systems on your roofs before the loan program started. Is that right?
Congressman, that is true. Those programs prior to this were almost entirely financed by the utilities that we, in essence, they financed that program moving at that point in time.
And on the program that you testified on regarding the program in California, I understand that has not actually led to any installation of photovoltaic operations on your rooftops. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the program, the 1705 program, in your particular circumstance, actually hasn't generated any stimulative effect, has it?
Well, Congressman, if you don't mind, let me just give you a little bit of context to that, because the program itself is a 4-year program designed to start on September 30th of 2011. Okay, and so if you look at,
in fact, you had to start by September. And I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's correct.
The program required you to start September 30th of 2011.
Correct, and we had started construction at that point in time. But the overall program, AMP program, was largely to be done in years 3 and 4 of a 4-year program. And so it would be, if you will, rolled out over time.
And I understand that, and again, I'm not being critical of the program. I understand the difficulties of having a supplier go bankrupt and the impact that can have on the delay of the system. But the truth of the matter, Mr. Chairman, is that this was a program that was supposed to create jobs right away. And it looks like it hasn't created a single job in your particular circumstance. Mr. Crane, I understand there's 5,000 folks that work for your company, NRG, and I think that the report that I read said that the total amount of loan guarantees that y'all and your partners have on those 3 projects are roughly $5.2 billion. And I congratulate you on employing 5,000 people, but I hearken back to Ms. DeRugi's comment about the ratio of jobs to the amount that's involved in the equation. And if I'm a simple country lawyer, but I can handle the math. I do 5,000 into $5 billion, and I get $1 million a job. Am I doing the math right on that one?
Well, first of all, I should clarify, maybe it was a flight of rhetoric. That's 5,000 people that work at NRG, full-time employees. The 3 projects that you're talking about, maybe you'll like this number more, is roughly employ 4,000 people directly.
I can assure you I don't like that number more, because that means it's more money per job.
But the indirect impact, is obviously a multiple of that. But as a CEO of a company, counting jobs is something that public policymakers like to do.
That's what we have to do. Let me ask you the same question I asked Mr. Rakovich, which is, would these projects have gone on but for the 1705 program?
Congressman, the 3 projects that we're involved in absolutely would not have happened without the 1705 project. Particularly, well, let me put it, there is absolutely no way the Ivanpah project would have happened. The Agua Caliente project without the Federal loan, maybe 1 in 5 chance. The First Solar, I said CVSR 1 in 5. First Solar, maybe 40% chance. The amount of money, Congressman, the private sector did not, contrary to what Dr. DeRugi said, the private sector project finance market was not large enough to do projects of this size. Most of the banks involved in project finance are actually European banks, and they have not been in the best condition over the last few years.
Let's talk about the CVSR project, and then I'm hoping there is a second round of questions, because this will take a little bit of time. But you said it's a 1 chance in 4 of it going on. When did you all start the analysis and start planning for this particular project?
Congressman, one of the things that also, I'm sorry, but all the 3 projects that we're involved in, NRG was not the initial proponent of the project. We bought into the projects well after the projects were started, so I actually can't answer the question on when the project.
When did you buy the project?
On CVSR?
Yes, sir.
We signed a purchase agreement in November of 2010.
And how far along was the project at that time?
Well, the project was in the development phase. They had most of the permits, and they had a letter of intent with the government in terms of the 1705 financing, which is, of projects of this size, we weren't going to get involved unless you had that letter of intent, because we knew the private sector could not provide that size of loan.
I understand it, although I've never done business in California and something for which I'm grateful. My understanding is it's not a quick process to get a development permit and a letter of intent for a project of this size in the State of California. Would that be a reasonable statement to make?
Well, I mean, your generalization that California is a difficult place to permit every type of power plant is a true generalization. I would agree with that. A solar photovoltaic plant that doesn't use water it has less issues and has no air emissions, has less issues than traditional power plants, but it has land use issues. But we weren't responsible for the permitting.
No, I'm not suggesting that you are. I'm suggesting that somebody thought this project was going to go forward before the stimulus program was enacted in 1705.
Well, yeah, I mean, SunPower started the development of it, and I'm sure they had reason. I don't know how they initially thought. I would guess that they started development before the financial crisis, where it was not inconceivable that the private sector would have come up with $1 billion loan. But believe me, after the financial crisis, there was no way the private sector was coming up with a $1 billion loan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope there is a second round.
Yeah, we will have a second round. Mr. Rakowicz, have you, I just want to be clear, have there been any solar panels put on these rooftops in the AMP project?
No, Mr. Chairman. As of right now, there is no.
So what have you done?
Solars.
Because Mr. Crane, the first testimony we heard today, he said you haven't drawn down any of the dollars. So what's happened with this project? I understand it's a 3 or 4 year phase thing, but so you haven't drawn down any of the money, but you're still approved, you're still going ahead, and yet you haven't built anything, you haven't done any construction, actually put panels on the rooftops like you're supposed to do to get the loan guarantee from the Department of Energy.
Right, Mr. Chairman, and again, I would first of all, let me just say that's almost by design. I mean, the first couple, 15 to 18 months, we did not project to do too much construction.
And how much money did you get again from the Department of Energy? What's the loan amount?
The total commitment is, I believe, $1.4 billion.
So you got 1.4 just waiting there. You can use it whenever you want. God bless America. It's just right there, ready for when you think you need it.
Well,
it's a pretty good deal. As Mr. Kelly's point, it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. With all due respect, I think, let me just explain the way the project works. So first of all, we go out and we identify utilities that are looking to sign power purchase agreements.
Let me just ask you, have you done any construction at any part of Phase 1? Have you done anything, any construction at all in the Phase 1 part of the program?
Yes, we prepared the 15 roofs in Southern California for solar in the future.
You prepared them, but no panels have been put up?
No panels have been put up on those roofs.
Have you returned to Fitch for a follow-up rating yet?
We don't have a project at this point in time to be rated.
Have you purchased any solar panels?
We have not purchased any solar panels.
So, purchase any. You don't even have any waiting, let alone put them up.
We have not purchased any.
Okay. Well, I'd like to enter for the record, and we can give you a copy of this email from our staff to lawyer from Bank of America, where we just asked them some questions regarding the Project AMP, this project. 4 different questions. Have PPAs been signed yet? Has Prologis purchased solar panels? Has Project AMP returned to Fitch for a follow-up rating yet? Has Project AMP begun construction in any locations that are part of Phase 1? And their representative says no to every one of those. And yet you still get to keep the money. It's still sitting there. This is amazing. When you and this was clear back in March, and obviously we're supposed to be moving on this by September 30th. So we'll give you a copy of this, but without objection, I'd like to enter this into the record. Mr. Crane, you got 3 projects, 3 loan guarantees that you guys have got.
Yes, yes.
And how much was the money again?
How much is
total?
The total amount of the loans?
Yeah.
For those 3 projects, it's about $4 billion.
And you received those solely on the merits of the project. This is, as to Dr. DeRugi's point, there was nothing based on friends and high places and political connections, all based on the merits of the project?
I believe so.
Have you been to the White House ever to discuss this issue and talk about how important these loan guarantees were?
To discuss loan guarantees?
Well, let me ask first, have you been to the White House?
Yes, I've been to the White House many times.
Many times? How many is many times?
Well, between the Bush White House and the Obama White House, I'd say 14, 15 times.
Since the 1705 program has been in place, how many times have you been to the White House?
I don't.
This administration, how many times have you been to the White House?
I'd say 6 or 7 times.
6 or 7 times. Who did you talk with when you were at the White House?
Well, I was a part of a large group once meeting with President Obama.
Did you talk about this loan guarantee program when you met with President Obama in that meeting?
We talked about climate change.
Okay. And who else have you talked with at the White House?
Vice President Biden. There, I spoke with him about the clean energy standard. But mainly, I spoke with Carol Browner or once with Valerie Jarrett, and that was all about the nuclear loan guarantee program.
Okay. And you guys are also involved with the Bright Source project as well, correct?
That's the Ivanpah project.
Ivanpah project, right. And are you familiar with if we can put the email up too, are you familiar with this email? This was brought up in our last hearing when Mr. Woolard was here with Bright Source. The email from Mr. Woolard to Mr. Silver at the Department of Energy asking him to edit and proofread a letter that Bright Source was going to send from Mr. Bryson to Bill Daley, White House Chief of Staff. Are you familiar with this email?
No.
Did you have any part? Did you know about this? Were you involved in any way with this email being sent to the Department of Energy?
I don't think I'm copied on it.
Pardon?
No, I know this. I have nothing to do with this.
Nothing to do at all? Didn't know about it?
No.
Okay. Did you talk to the White House in those 7 visits you had to the White House? Did you talk to anyone there about this project, the Ivan Paul project?
Never. I never spoke with anyone in the White House about this project or any other renewable loan guarantee, only about the nuclear loan.
Okay, so you've been in the White House, you've talked a lot about energy issues in general. Do you think it's maybe out of the ordinary or not customary to have a company send an email to the Department of Energy asking those folks at the Department of Energy who are going to be responsible in determining whether you get the loan or not? Do you think it's unusual for them to ask the Department of Energy to edit an email, edit a letter that their chairman of the board was going to send to the White House chief of staff? Do you think that's unusual?
Well, I don't know. It's nothing that I've ever done. But whether it's unusual or not, I don't know what common practice is.
You don't know. You've been in the White House 6 times to talk about energy policy. You don't know what common practice is.
Well, I mean, I don't know that.
You think it's uncommon to get that specific and ask the person who's supposed to say yay or nay on a loan project that we'd like you to edit this letter that our chairman is going to send to the White House chief of staff? I
don't think I personally have ever sent an email or a letter to the White House, so I don't have a lot of experience, in this area.
Okay. Well, maybe you didn't have to send one. You were going there all the time. You got to talk to him in person. I think that the gentleman would now go to our second round of questioning and would yield to the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Although members of Congress from both parties have supported 1705 loan guarantees for projects in their districts, it now appears that some of my friends in the majority have had a change of heart. In a report published in March, the majority argued that DOE, quote, amassed an excessively risky loan portfolio, unquote. Now, there are experts who do disagree with the majority's assessment. Recognizing the inherent risk in emerging green technology loans, Congress authorized a set-aside of $2.47 billion for potential losses in the DOE 1705 loan guarantee program. According to several analysts, even after accounting for the collapse of Solyndra and Beacon Power, the actual default rate on the DOE loan guarantee program ended up being a fraction of what the government actually budgeted for the losses. Bloomberg government also came to a different conclusion than the majority. Bloomberg's recent report, Beyond Solyndra, an analysis of DOE's loan guarantee program, concluded that the 1705 DOE loan portfolio is, quote, composed of predominantly lower-risk projects, unquote. Now, Ms. Branicki, do you agree with the majority that Ormat Technologies project is excessively risky, or it is a lower-risk project? Why?
The 3 projects that received the DOE loan guarantee are very low-risk projects from a technology point of view. They are similar to many megawatts that have built utilizing the same technology. It was all about expanding geothermal and not innovation in geothermal.
Right, I understand, but the risk was low. Is that what you're saying?
Very low.
Now, as I understand it, one reason why the portfolio can be considered low risk is because most of the projects that receive 1705 loan guarantees are for power generation. And DOE required these companies to have long-term agreements in place with nearby utilities to purchase the power once it was built. This means that the projects have a guaranteed income stream, which greatly limits any risk of default. Now, Mr. Mancini, can you explain the difference between the power generation projects like the Cogentrix loan guarantee and project finance deals? And do you already have agreements in place to sell power to major utilities once the projects are completed?
We do, in the case of Alamosa, have a long-term power purchase agreement with the Public Service Company of Colorado to purchase the power. That is one of the requirements of the DOE loan.
You couldn't do it if you didn't have some kind of an agreement in place, right?
We couldn't do it with the DOE.
It doesn't work financially.
It would be very difficult, very difficult.
Because otherwise you'd be stuck with a white elephant.
There are very few of those projects that have actually succeeded without long-term contracts.
Now, Herb Allison, independent consultant commissioned by the White House to review DOE's Loan Program Office, found the DOE's support of public-private partnerships between power generators and utilities in states like California ensure that loan guarantee recipients have a steady and predictable funding source. Now, Mr. Crane, do you agree with this assessment? Mr. Rakowicz, the majority has documented that Prologis's Project AMP has yet to start generating solar energy. Well, that fact is disappointing. Can you tell us how much taxpayers' money has been drawn down by the project so far?
Zero, Congressman.
How has the project, what was that answer?
None.
None, okay. Has the Project AMP loan guarantee designed to mitigate, how was this loan guarantee designed to mitigate the risk of taxpayer losses?
I would say three things. One, we're not going to move forward unless we have a long-term power purchase agreement, which is generally a 20-year agreement, 15 to 20-year agreement with a utility, okay, number one. The second thing is that we're not going to think about, we're putting up the equity, or us and our financial partners are putting up all of the equity. As well, the lender has 20% at risk that is not guaranteed. So nearly 40% of the project is at risk before the government puts up the guarantee. And so we're not going to put up any
You know, the question here is the performance. And I think that it's clear that this program is performing better than expected in financial terms. One of Congress's main goals in creating this 1705 loan guarantee program was to spur technological advances in renewable energy technology. Now, Ms. Braunicki, do you believe your project funded by the 1705 program financing is spurring technological advances?
Sorry,
are you spurring technological advances with the program that that has been financed by 1705?
Does it mean spurring technological?
I mean, are you creating technological advances?
Not in this program. We are an innovative company in other programs, but this is a proven technology, no experiment.
Mr. Crane?
Yes, Mr. Member. It's particularly the solar Ivanpah project is a huge technological advance.
Mr. Mancini?
As I explained in my opening remarks, the technology used in this project was used in the space program but never deployed in a commercial scale, utility scale project. This gave it the opportunity to do that, and I'm happy to report that it is operating successfully.
Okay. I just want to say, Mr. Chairman, that you know, when we have an isolated look at what the program actually done, we've got some testimony here that suggests that it could be working within the context in which it was designed. Now, on the other hand, there are legitimate questions that are raised by Dr. DeRouge about, you know, the risk involved. In this case, it looks like it might be working, but I think that we still need to have some caution here. I asked unanimous consent. Moments ago, Mr. Chairman, you made public the email your staff cited to allege the DOE had violated the law. I have 3 documents which I would respectfully suggest would refute that: an engineering assessment by the Bank of America's independent consultant, 2 official DOE documents. All these documents certify that the commencement of construction and refute the allegations that have been made. And I ask that these be submitted in the record, and I appreciate your consideration.
Without objection. Thank you. Mr. Crane, I want to put back up this email again, because I'm just flabbergasted that we actually have an email where the CEO of BrightSource, relative to the Ivanpah project, is asking the Department of Energy to proofread a letter that their chairman of the board, now Commerce Secretary, plans to send to the White House Chief of Staff. And a couple of the highlighted things there: send me any comments or suggestions of ways you think we can improve this message. So definitely asking for edits from the Department of Energy. Contained in the draft letter is the statement, "Dear Bill," referring to the White House, "we need a commitment from the White House to quarterback loan closure between OMB and the Department of Energy by March 18th. Later on in the email, or later on in the draft letter that they're asking for edits and review of, they said we need guidance and support from the White House. And so this takes place in March of 2011. The loan guarantee is ultimately approved, I believe, on April 11th, 2011. Those 7 visits you had to the White House, were any of them during this time frame, the spring of 2011?
I would think that probably there were some.
Some prior to the April 11th, 2011 approval of the loan guarantee?
Yeah, I would think there would actually have been more before than after.
More before than after. And this project's a big project. You had the big picture up there, all the solar panels. This is one big deal to your company and, of course, BrightSource.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you have to understand 2 things. One is this project at that basis, I mean, we were involved, but it was still basically BrightSource's project, number 1. Number 2, this may seem like a big deal to you, but my focus was entirely on our nuclear project in Texas, which was a much bigger project than this, 5 times larger than this project.
Well, BrightSource got billions of dollars. It's not a big deal to you at all then? This project wasn't that big a deal?
If it didn't happen, it was we had not invested. BrightSource was the developer of this project. You know, it was.
But you obviously got an interest. You're a partner with BrightSource in this project, correct? You had pictures of it right here.
Well, now we are.
Yeah.
Now we have hundreds of millions of dollars invested. But as of March or April 2011, we had nothing.
Oh, so it's important now, but it wasn't important then.
Well,
that's what you're saying.
Well, it was important to the people who had developed the project, which is BrightSource. We had an opportunity to invest in the project.
It was important enough to BrightSource, your partner, to have the Department of Energy do a check over their homework, and a letter they were going to send to the White House Chief of Staff is pretty important. But not important to you?
At that time, if we had not had an opportunity to invest in that project, it would not have mattered.
So in any of those meetings, just to be clear and just for the record, in any of those 7 meetings you had with the White House, and some of them taking place in the spring of 2011, you did not bring up the Ivanpah project and this issue at all in your visit with the White House?
Absolutely, unequivocally not.
Okay. You didn't know about the email, you didn't know about the draft letter, and you didn't bring it up in any of your visits to the White House?
That's right.
Okay. Let me just bring up another point here, if I could. Could we get the second email up? Just because I want to see this, and I want to let the doctor comment on this one. So this is now an email from Prologis, Mr. Drew Torbin, to Kimberly Heimerd at the Department of Energy, and this has gone the other way. Now this gets right to the point of when you get so close and you got to grease the skids of government to get approval. But it says, we've made adjustments to the memos, which we believe are necessary to accurately reflect the situation. And we're talking about an internal memorandum. So here we now have outside folks. Pardon? Oh, this was just entered in the record by Mr. Kucinich. Okay. The same thing. Glad we're thinking the same here, Mr. Kucinich. But now we have it going the other way around, where we have the Department of Energy having somewhat private sector edit and draft internal documents that are communicated within the Department of Energy. I mean, this is if the American taxpayers can just see what is going on in this program, and I believe it was your third point, Doctor, in your testimony. You talked about this is what happens when cronyism gets to this level and this much money is at stake.
Yeah, when a lot of money is at stake for a company, whether it's direct cash or loan guarantees, which would basically give them, as Mr. Kelly said, lower rates than they would get on the open market. I mean, it actually shifts a lot of the incentive for the company itself to expand a lot of energy rather than to please the company, but to please the government, or actually to meet the standards expected by the government. But I believe the reverse is true. I mean, there's a huge economic literature. Public choice economics is all about the way the reverse is true too, where governments design programs in order to fit some companies and some industries. So yeah, it goes both ways.
I mean, I just find it amazing that on one hand we have a company saying, hey, edit this letter for us that our chairman is going to send to the White House Chief of Staff. And then we also have now the Department of Energy say, hey, private sector, edit this internal memo we're going to send to folks in the Department of Energy. I mean, unbelievable. On my time in public office, I've never seen those kind of communications going on in a loan guarantee program, or for that matter, any program. I appreciate that. I'll yield now to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chairman. And I know this can be uncomfortable. Listen, I don't fault you for taking advantage of a government that continues codependent type of a model, and it's sometimes hard to walk away from it once it's there. You say, well, it's just so easy, why wouldn't we do it? But it does come down to what's the return on the investment for the people whose money's actually at risk. And I think that's where the disconnect comes, because people think, oh, it came from the government, it didn't hurt anybody. But then you say, well, where did the government get the money? And you find out it's people who actually pay taxes. And then you find out who's paying taxes, and you find out, well, not everybody pays taxes. Some of us do, some of us don't. But for those that do get up every, where I live, a lot of people still carry a little lunch bucket. And by the time they get done paying their school taxes, they get done paying their municipal taxes, they get done paying their state taxes, they get done paying their federal taxes, there's just no money left for them to take care of their kids and to plan their future. And I think that's where the disconnect comes, because we actually start to believe this is free money. It's not free money. This is taxpayer money. Mr. Rakowicz, how much money did Cogentrix get?
I'm sorry, I'm not with Cogentrix.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were. I thought you were. All right. I meant Mr. Mancini.
The federal loan guarantee amount was $90 million.
$90 million. You know how many permanent jobs that created?
We created directly approximately 10 permanent jobs, but hundreds of
10 permanent jobs. So let me ask you.
But then there were
not you, but you sitting at your kitchen table. And I said, and I would tell you, you know what? We just made a $90.6 million investment, and this is all about jobs. This whole initiative was about creating jobs. And here's the good news. 10 people got jobs.
Well,
do you see any reason why the American people no longer have faith in what's going on in Washington, D.C.? The disconnect is so great here. It is so foreign to people who live in this area that this money actually comes out of working people's pockets. It's free. It's not free. This drives me absolutely nuts. Can you imagine going to a bank and say, I want to borrow $90 million, and here's the upside. I can hire 10 people with that. They'd say, hey, you know what? It's good to see you. Please leave. I don't get this. And I will tell you, Ms. Bernicki, because obviously you don't know a lot of what's going on, this gentleman, Mr. Thompson, before he worked for you, he was an in-house, he worked for Mr. Reed. Kai Anderson of Cassidy and Associates is an outside lobbyist for your firm. Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who he worked for?
He
was Harry Reid's deputy chief of staff until 2005. Okay, so Mr. Thompson worked for Harry Reid. Mr. Anderson worked for Harry Reid. Yoram Bronicky, I would assume, that's your husband maybe? Or who would that be?
My son.
That's your son. And he was a donor to the Senator Reid's re-election campaign. And there's nothing wrong with this. Believe me, there's nothing wrong. Here's the point, though. Here's my point. This is not to embarrass you. When we follow this Judas goat of taking money from the government, there are strings attached to all this money we take, and there's repercussions, and it gets to the point where people start to wonder, as I said earlier, this feeding frenzy to come after this money. How in the world did 25 of you get to the table, and the others were left out in the cold? Because then you start to look, well, how did they get there? And you say, well, geez, the guys worked for Harry Reid, and the other guy worked for Harry Reid, and all of a sudden Harry Reid gets involved in it, and all of a sudden the money starts to flow, and so people start to wonder, how did it get gamed? Now, again, this is what the tough part of you sitting there. The American people have a right to know, how did this happen?
If I may?
Absolutely.
I sincerely believe that our project is one of the most fit projects for the program. Mm-hmm. It was well advanced, it was shovel-ready, actual construction has started when we submitted the application.
Right.
The financial markets were not available to provide financing for such projects in 2009, and this certainly accelerated the construction.
I have no question about that.
And enabled us.
Listen, because I'm going to run out of time. I understand that. It was a good project for your company. Your geothermal people, you build the geothermal plants, and so yes, it was a good project for you. But let me ask you, and Mr. Crane, Bright Source, Agua Caliente, California Valley, Solar Ranch, Project AMP. Where do sell the power that they generate?
They all sell to California, mainly to Pacific Gas and Electric.
PGE. And so why is that market so strong in California?
It's strong because California has a 33% renewable portfolio standard.
Which means what?
Which means that by a certain year, I think it's 2020, 33% of the power.
By government mandate?
Yes.
Okay, so the government says you must buy this renewable energy.
Well, this is the state government.
No, it's, okay.
Yeah.
So the market was created by a government mandate.
Which I think then was endorsed by the people.
No, I understand that, but it was created. It didn't happen in the free market. It was created by a government mandate that said you will supply it at this level. So the market wasn't created by a market demand. It was created by a government saying this is what you're going to do. You're going to do it with renewables, okay?
That's correct.
Now, that's why, listen, 1703, that's why we were hot in nuclear back then, because 1703 did address nuclear. 1705 doesn't. I understand that. I understand. So you go to where the money is. It's the old Jerry Maguire, show me the money. I get it. But when it comes down to a government that creates the market through a mandate, that's not the same thing, because, you know, at the end of the day, no matter how much you subsidize it, if it's not market ready, no matter what amount of money you subsidize it with, it's not going to float. And if it's marketable, you don't have to subsidize it a penny. So we create these markets, and then we create a business opportunity. I do not fault you for taking advantage of a government that mandated something on people that they didn't want on their own. We forced it down their throat. They didn't just go out and buy it because they wanted to. So we create a market, and then we say, okay, now we're going to create the funding for you folks to go after it. I get it. I get it. But at the end of the day, every single penny came out of taxpayers' pockets. It did not come from the government. It was funneled through the government. Any government spending is flat out taxes. That's all it is. That's all it is. We've lost connection. We've disconnected ourselves with the source, the revenue source. It's hardworking American taxpayers. I yield back my time, Mr. Chairman. Listen, I appreciate your patience with us, but I got to tell you, where I come from, these people are struggling. They're out of work, and they're trying to figure out, some of them working 2 and 3 jobs, moms working jobs and everything else, and they're trying to figure out, what the heck are you people doing with the money we send you? Just doesn't make sense to the average American.
Thank the gentleman. Yield now to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Mulvaney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I appreciate the courtesy extended to me to participate today. Mr. Crane, I want to talk to you about the statement towards the end of your both written and oral testimony, which I think is important, where you mentioned that NRG has actually invested $1 billion of your own equity in the 3 projects that we've discussed previously. I think the notes I had said that $400 million of that, for example, were in the California Valley Solar Ranch, the CVSR program. And I think that's an important, you went on to say that in blunt terms, we don't get repaid unless the government has been repaid. And I think that's you've hit on an important issue there, because I think a lot of the frustration that you hear amongst the panelists today, or at least the members, is a reflection of what folks back home are hearing, which is, why are these folks getting paid when the taxpayer is still on the hook? That's what they saw with Fannie Mae. It's what they saw with Freddie Mac. They saw it to a certain extent with Solyndra. They see the owners and sometimes the officers of these companies making money when the taxpayers are still ultimately on the hook. So I want to talk about this for just a second. Are you telling us, sir, that there's no, on that $400 million in equity, there's no preferential payments, no return on that equity until the debt has been repaid?
Congressman, what I'm saying is in the waterfall of payments, the debt service happens before there's any return to equity. I don't know the month on month, year on year, but debt has a higher priority of repayment than equity.
It does. You know, you said the debt service is above the equity on the waterfall. What about the repayment of the principal of the loan?
Well, that debt service is interest plus principal.
Okay. You all collect fees and management consulting fees, I would assume, for the management of the project, correct?
Well, yeah, operating fees and operating fees for a solar photovoltaic project are pretty small because there's no moving parts. Yeah, operating fees for any project go above debt service because you have to keep the project operating to earn the income.
And I have no difficulty with that. Is there any debt? Have the owners of the company extended any debt to this CVSR program?
No.
Okay, so it's just equity. You don't have any subordinated or non-subordinated debt in the project?
No. We don't ever put debt to any type of project.
All right.
We're not debt providers.
What are the repayment terms? How long will it take to repay the $1.2 billion government guaranteed loan?
Congressman, I'm sorry, I should know, but I don't know what the term of the repayment is on the projects. I mean, usually I would say the debt's tied to the length of the power purchase agreement, and these are 20 and 25-year power purchase agreements. So
that would make sense. And again, I don't know the specific terms of this, but the ones I've seen before, they would be tied to that agreement. You've got a guaranteed flow of funds coming in because you have the agreement to sell the electricity to the providers in California, and your debt would be very close. The loan terms would be very close to that.
Usually the debt ends a little bit before the power purchase agreement. Exactly.
So here's what I'm struggling with. The statement that you made that in blunt terms we don't get repaid unless the government gets repaid. The taxpayer is going to, in theory, be on the hook for something for the next 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
But you made a statement to Wall Street analysts in August saying that your company was going to get all of your capital back in 2 to 5 years.
Do you want me to explain that?
And that's what I'm asking you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, that statement was, which was later taken out of context by the New York Times, had to do with a solar project called Blythe, which has no Department of Energy loan guarantee.
Okay, so it's your testimony here again today that there will be no return on equity and no return of equity on the CVSR program until after the loans, the government guaranteed loans are repaid in full.
Again, I would have to see the profile, but I'm not saying exactly that, because if, no project, if you say to equity, we're not going to give you $1 back for 20 years, there's never going to be equity in a project. What I'm saying is that the debt service under the terms of the loan will be serviced, before any money can come out, as we call in the business, out of the waterfall to equity. So debt gets repaid before equity.
Sure, and I understand. I understand how debt and equity work, but when you tell me the debt is going to get serviced before there's a return on equity, doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as the debt is going to be repaid in full before there's a return on equity.
Yes, that's probably correct.
So I guess you will get repaid at least something on that equity before the taxpayer is completely off the hook.
I'm sure we'll get some income, yes, before the debt is fully off the books.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Crane. Thank you to all the panelists.
Mr. Crane, were you taking out of context in some of these other quotes in the New York Times piece, like, I've never seen anything that I had to do in my 20 years in the power industry that involved less risk than these projects? Was that in context or out of context?
No, that's in context. I do believe that in the context of when,
you intend to do as much of this business as you can get your hands on?
Yes, and keep in mind, Mr. Chairman, that we're talking about a company that's trying to build a nuclear power plant. I would absolutely say that a solar photovoltaic ground-mounted in the California desert is about the least risky project that you can do in the power industry.
Okay.
So no, that was not taken out of context.
Okay. Just wanted to be clear which was in context, which was out of it. Mr. Rakowicz, to your knowledge, before you got the loan guarantee, conditional or final, did the DOE share any internal documents with you or your company or representatives of your company?
I'm not sure I follow. What types of documents would you be referring to?
Any documents. I put up the one email where you guys got to edit a Drew Torban. Does Drew Torban work for you?
Yes, he does.
And
works for our company.
Understand. And does Jonathan Plow work for your company?
No, Jonathan Plow does not work for our company. I believe he works for Bank of America.
Okay. But Drew Torban does?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, you got to edit an internal memo, but I want to know, did they share any other internal documents with you?
I don't know. I was not involved in the negotiations. Okay. I would say that we were completely transparent with the DOE as to the situation that was evolving at that point in time as it relates to Solyndra. And needless to say, we wanted certain documents in the final loan document. We wanted the DOE to acknowledge that. And so there was back and forth that took place as it related to that particular email, and that's not unusual.
You don't think it's unusual?
I don't.
That someone from your company gets to edit an internal memo and what's going to be distributed to Department of Energy employees?
I don't think it's unusual.
People are paid by the taxpayers?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it's unusual, given the back and forth that needed to take place before the loan document was signed, that there would be back and forth conversation, editing, and the like that needed to take place between the parties.
But you did not participate in any of that back and forth?
I did not, no.
As a CEO, you didn't think it was, you didn't participate?
I was not even aware of it at the time.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me just show you another email, because we got another one here that just astounds me. This is from Mr. Peter O'Rourke at the Department of Energy to Jonathan Plow, who works for Bank of America, Drew Torban, who works for you all, right? Okay? It says, please do not send beyond 2 of you. This is very important. Feel free to use the concepts that we articulate in your own words if you don't already have this in your message. And that refers to, if we can, I don't know, can we put the next slide up too or not? I don't know if we can put that one up. But it refers to Project AMP, Department of Energy developed document that they're going to send to you with all kinds of information that you guys can use then in your presentation. So this is, I mean, let's think about the way I think the American citizen would see this. This is like the teacher telling 2 of the students, not the whole class, 2 of the students, hey, here's what's going to be on the test. We're going to give it to you. Don't tell, in fact, they say that. Don't send beyond the 2 of you. Don't tell anyone else we're giving you the answers to the exam. And you say, that's fine, that's the normal course of business, back and forth?
Well,
and you didn't have any knowledge of it as the CEO of the company?
I think as it relates to, Mr. Chairman, I think as it relates to what was sent, which was the presentation about
Mr. Crane, did you get that kind of treatment? Do you think, did you get like internal documents from the Department of Energy telling you, hey, here's the answer to the exam. If you say things this way, you're more likely to get billions of dollars of taxpayer money in a guaranteed loan? Did you get that privilege?
Well, I can guarantee that I've never seen a Department of Energy internal memorandum.
So you didn't get it?
And I don't think.
Mr. Mancini, did you guys get that kind of special treatment?
Not that I'm aware of.
You don't know of anyone to get any internal documents from?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Ms. Bernicki?
I'm not aware of.
Yeah. Okay. Doctor, does this kind of seem kind of unusual to you, or this is par for the course when you head down this road, I assume, right? This is what happens when you decide you're going to have this kind of cronyism in government.
I'm not entirely surprised. I mean, I don't know this particular case.
Yeah. What does, I mean, Mr. Rakowicz, did you think it's a little unusual? Maybe this, Torben's the one who worked for you, maybe just a great guy. The department said, you know, he's a really nice guy. He's been working hard. We're going to tell him the answers to the exam.
Chairman, I don't think that sending a presentation as to what Project AMP is about, I mean, that is our project. And so sending the presentation I don't see as being unusual, no.
Feel free to use the concepts that we articulate in your own words. So this is certainly intellectual property developed at the Department of Energy that they're sending out, hey, you might want to use this language when you send it back to us, higher chance of approval. That's the implication I draw from that statement. Is that not what you conclude?
I don't know. I hadn't seen it. I mean, put it up.
You got it, but again, we got to take this whole thing. This is why we've had several hearings on this. You take this all in context. Mr. Kelly pointed, 26 companies got taxpayer money. And we're in this loan guarantee. 22 of them had credit ratings of BB-, junk status. Most of the companies who got money, a significant number at least, is probably more accurate, but a significant number had strong connections to the Obama administration, either during the campaign or, in BrightSource case, the chairman of the board became Commerce Secretary shortly after they get the loan approved. I mean, it's amazing. So we see all this, and now we have emails going back and forth saying, hey, say it this way, hey, edit this letter that we want to send. This is, and so when you put it in the big picture, no wonder the taxpayers are saying, what the heck is going on with our government? This is not the way it's supposed to work. And, I mean, it's just so frustrating to look at, this is what's going on at the Department of Energy, where they're picking the winners and losers. As Mr. Kelly pointed out, hundreds of companies applied, 26 got the $15 billion. And those, I mean, such a deal, such a deal. And you think this is, in your words just a little bit ago, you think this is customary and the way it's supposed to work?
What I said, Mr. Chairman,
you said this is the course of doing business.
What I said was sending a presentation on our exact project that we're working on back and forth doesn't seem unusual to me, no.
Doesn't seem unusual that the Department of Energy tells you this is how you need to say it. Here's the answers to the test. This is the way you need to do it. That's not unusual?
I couldn't read the email. I don't know exactly.
Well, I'll read it to you. Please do not send beyond 2 of you. This is very important. Feel free to use the concepts that we articulate in your own words. So feel free to plagiarize. That's what it says.
Right. It's a presentation that is about our project. And so going back and forth on a presentation that ultimately we will use or somebody will use in the future, it just doesn't, I don't understand the context of why this was sent. But
did you personally have any communication with the Department of Energy?
I did not.
You didn't talk to Mr. O'Rourke, Mr. Silver, any of these folks at the Department of Energy? You didn't talk to Director Chu?
No,
Secretary Chu, I should say?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you make any trips to the White House?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you talk to anyone in the administration?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you talk to Bill Daley about this when he was White House Chief of Staff?
No, sir.
Mr. Biden?
No, sir.
Wow. Okay, so you got a little different treatment than Mr. Crane, but I understand. All right. With that, I would yield to the gentleman from the ranking member from Ohio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to the email that you discussed. Here again goes right to Bank of America, because the only party to this email that has not provided public testimony regarding its involvement in the loan program is Bank of America. Now, the impact and import of this particular memo, which you've cited as a matter of concern, we really don't understand it until we get Bank of America's perspective. So I would just like to ask my friend if there's a way that you and I could work together to see if Bank of America, and for that matter Goldman Sachs, who's on another program, that the guys at the top, that they be invited to come in to explain their point of view about this. Is there, I mean, could we see if we could work together, and would you consider this?
Definitely consider that, and I appreciate the ranking member bringing it up. I think in light of what we've uncovered here today, that is something we need to think about.
I want to also say that in listening to this discussion, and my friend Mr. Kelly has a way of continuing to hammer home about the benefits that are going to some at the exclusion of others. And that's a valid question, always is in this town. As you were talking, one of the things that occurred to me about this particular model in this discussion we're having, just to kind of, let's look at it from a different level. This is all about centralization of power. Literally, we could have a different model. We could be decentralizing power. We could be investing in decentralization of power, get more people involved in manufacturing, let's say microtechnologies, for example. But when you've got a centralized government and a centralization of power on business part, you put those two things together, there's a different philosophy at work here. And that's something that I just wanted to, that's not the subject of this hearing, but I just wanted to put that out there as an ongoing concern that I have, because inevitably people's utility rates under one model are likely to be higher than they are under another model. Now, I just want to say that when Congress created this 1705 program, which is the subject of this hearing, it, as I mentioned earlier, it appropriated $2.47 billion to pay credit subsidy costs for the energy projects, and that this program became a partnership between the government and the private sector, and that this committee held a hearing where we learned that the 1705 loan guarantee portfolio is low risk. Projects will likely achieve a degree of success within this particular model. Now, there are some who feel, well, the 1705 portfolio is a bunch of companies on the verge of bankruptcy. That doesn't appear to be the case. It appears to be a collection of projects with solid private and public sector backing, and I would like to hear from our witnesses on why they believe their respective projects will benefit their bottom line, the environment, but most importantly, and it's the question that Mr. Kelly keeps raising, and it's a valid question, how do the taxpayers benefit? I want you to tell me that, too. I'm interested. So let's go, Mr. Mancini. Your company, Centrix, was able to build this solar project in southern Colorado. It's my understanding you obtained about a $90 million loan guarantee from DOE, that you've successfully built the project. Clean energy is being sold to a major Colorado public utility. Tell me how this is a win-win for your company, the environment, the taxpayers. Is it? Tell the committee.
Ranking Member Kucinich, just a point of information before I answer the question. I just want to clarify that I am a managing director of Goldman Sachs. I've been with the company almost 20 years. And if there are any questions that you'd like to present to Goldman Sachs, I'd be happy here to answer those questions. So that would be unusual to draw attention to myself, but I think for the record I need to clarify what my role is. I am not the CEO, obviously, of Goldman Sachs, but be happy to answer any questions I can. To answer the question, with respect to the project that we funded, or together with the government, what we did is advance the technology and took it from I would call it a context in which it was being applied, in the space program, and put it in a different context to prove that that technology could be applied on a utility scale, commercial scale project to produce green power for the citizens of Colorado or citizens anywhere in the country. So one of the benefits was to prove the hypothesis that this particular type of technology could in fact be deployed commercially.
Okay, I just want to thank you, and I just want to respond to you calling to our attention that you're a managing director, and that's in the commodities.
Correct. I'm a managing director in the commodities business unit.
Okay. We want to talk to the person that runs Goldman Sachs. You don't run the whole company. You're one of the.
I do not, but one comment that I do think is very important to make is that in respect of the DOE loan program, there was no political favor. There was no.
Oh, you know what? Thank you for saying that. You've just said that for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mancini, let me ask you this. If the gentleman, just for one second, if the 1705 program had not been in place, would Goldman Sachs, would you have funded, would you put capital at risk in the Cogentrix in the project?
If the 1705 program had not been available.
Just be clear, you're a wholly owned subsidiary of Goldman Sachs. If this, I mean, I know it's hypothetical, but if that money wasn't there that you could get from the government, from the taxpayer, would this have been a worthy project? Would Goldman say, you know what, we believe in this. This is a wholly owned subsidiary, but we're going to put up the cash. Would you guys have done it?
Just remember, Mr. Chairman, our first stop was to no less than 10 commercial banks to see if we could get the funding, including Goldman Sachs, from a debt perspective. And we were not.
No?
Beg your pardon?
So the answer is no? You wouldn't have done it?
We would not have done the project. The cost of capital would have been too expensive.
Okay. So I mean, again, I think that sort of proves our point. This is not where, private venture capital will go, but it's okay to put the taxpayer money at risk. Are you guys, is Goldman a major investor in Amonex company? Are you guys an investor in that company as well?
My understanding is we own 3% of Amonex and do not have any board seat.
And what about Xcel Energy? Do you have a direct financial interest in that company or an indirect financial interest in that company?
We do not. There are funds that are managed by Goldman Sachs Asset Management, which is much like Fidelity or Vanguard, that puts together a portfolio of securities for investors in the mutual fund, for which we earn a fee that's based not on the returns of any particular company within that portfolio, but just based on the raw dollar amounts that are vested across.
But would it be fair to say an indirect relationship in that there's a fund you manage which does have a direct relationship with Xcel Energy?
I'd say it's very tenuous, frankly.
Okay, but there's some interest there.
Not by Goldman Sachs.
All right. I just want to ask this. The loan arrangement, the $90 million you got in the loan agreement from the Department of Energy, did that also in that agreement include the fact that Cogentrix needed to buy electricity, or Xcel would buy electricity from Cogentrix, and that Amonex would be the solar panel provider to Cogentrix?
Well, Xcel owns or controls Public Service of Colorado. Public Service of Colorado sells that electricity at no profit to its customers. There is no markup to that electricity because it is regulated in a specific way in respect of this project that does not allow them to pass through any additional costs or markup other than the cost of the power.
The question was the agreement, the loan agreement between the Department of Energy and Cogentrix included the details that, or part of that agreement was that Xcel Energy and Cogentrix have a relationship, and Amonex is the solar panel provider to Cogentrix, correct?
The relationship between Cogentrix is with Public Service of Colorado. It has a power purchase agreement, and Xcel XL is a parent company, but we don't have any relationship directly with XL.
But certainly with Amonex.
Amonex is the panel provider.
And that's in the agreement.
Correct.
And Goldman has a relation, and you have a financial interest, a direct financial interest in Amonex.
Sure. It had nothing to do, though, with the selection of Amonex. Public Service of Colorado required us to use a certain type of technology. Amonex was one of 4 companies that were the leading manufacturers.
Yeah, you had to use a
Our engineers then evaluated all 4 of those companies, and based on the technology and the evaluation
of the technology. Do you have a financial interest in the others?
And the cost.
So wait, I just want to be clear.
No, not to my knowledge.
So it did work out that there were 4 possibilities based on what you just said, and oh, by the way, the one that was selected is the one that Goldman has a financial interest in.
Only because it provided the best technology at the lowest cost, which was very important to PSCO.
But certainly benefits Goldman.
How it benefits Goldman is almost inconsequential, quite honestly. It's because it has a 3% interest doesn't mean that it's...
So it's inconsequential that the company that was chosen of the 4 possibilities is the only one that has that Goldman has a financial interest in. That's inconsequential?
That ignores the fact, Mr. Chairman, that
particularly when
PSCO...
You got to go back to the first point, particularly when Cogentrix is a wholly owned subsidiary of Goldman Sachs. Just so you can see the chart, you got the Department of Energy giving 90 million, taxpayer dollars to Cogentrix. And then part of the deal says, oh, by the way, the solar panels, 4 companies you can choose from. And the agreement says you're going to pick the one that Goldman has a financial interest in, Amonex. That's a pretty good deal for Goldman all the way around, isn't it? Particularly when you said that we wouldn't finance this, banks wouldn't do it, but we can put the taxpayers on the hook for it, and we're going to make a lot of money. Based on Mr. Crane, what he had to say earlier, you put panels in the desert, this is a great deal for everybody. God bless America, this is wonderful, except the ratepayers and the taxpayers.
With all due respect, Mr. Chairman, the process that we went through in order to select a panel manufacturer was blessed by the independent engineers of DOE. It was also required.
Whoa. You just said the independent folks at DOE? I thought if there's one thing we've proven here today, if there's one thing that's completely clear, it's not independent. We got emails going back and forth. Edit this for us. This is a letter we're going to send to the White House Chief of Staff. Hey, here's the answers to the exam. You guys get them. Make sure you can paraphrase. You can plagiarize. Send it back to us. If there's one thing we've proven, it's not independent.
The engineers that are advising DOE are not our engineers, meaning they're advising someone other than us. So they had to make an independent judgment that was not our judgment, that in fact they agreed that Amonex was the better technology at the lowest cost to the ratepayers. Now, PSCO, at the end of the day, also had to bless Amonex as a supplier, and they did so as the lowest cost provider. So to suggest that there was some
let me ask you this. So you would have preferred that, it's certainly a benefit that Amonex was the one selected by the so-called independent engineers?
Could you say that again?
It's certainly better for Goldman that Amonex was selected by the independent engineers?
To suggest that we would put $116 million of our equity capital into a project because a 3% interest...
I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is the deal's pretty good, and you got to go back to the first point. You're a wholly owned subsidiary of Goldman Sachs. As you just told Mr. Kucinich, you sit on the board of Goldman. You're one of the managing directors.
Will the gentleman yield?
Be happy to yield.
I just want to associate myself with your line of questioning. Thank you.
What you are suggesting is that Goldman Sachs and Cogentrix would put $116 million of its equity at risk in order to benefit itself in some way indirectly through a 3% interest in a company.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting that there is this close-knit relationship up and down the line, and there's this cozy relationship between the department and folks who are getting the loan. That's what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying it's a bad thing you did this, or bad that it worked out this way. I'm just pointing out this is what's involved here, and this is why we're having the hearings, and this is what the American taxpayers are saying. This is not what we're supposed to be doing. This is not the way the system is supposed to work.
Mr. Chairman, this depiction is incorrect. I'm sorry. To suggest that we have an interest in XL Energy that somehow is benefiting Goldman Sachs is just not correct. We don't.
I think the focus of my questioning, though, once you pointed that out to me, my focus of my questioning wasn't on Excel. I accept that point. I'm not coming down the left-hand side. I'm coming down the right-hand side. All right?
If we're making a decision,
I'll concede that.
If we're making a decision to put as much as $160 million at risk for a tenuous and minimal return that might accrue to a company in which we own 3%, that would be completely irrational on the part of Goldman Sachs, Centrix, and all of its constituencies, including the shareholders.
At least, my point is, it at least raises some concern in light of what we've seen with the way the Department of Energy dealt with Prologis, the sharing of emails, the sharing of information, in light of the fact that Mr. Crane has been to the White House 7 different times, in light of the fact that we got letters being drafted that are going to go to the White House Chief of Staff from the Chairman of the Board of BrightSource with the I mean, at some point you got to say, where does this all end? What really took place in here? No wonder a whole bunch of these companies didn't get a chance, because the ones that did were so close with the government. We see why the projects got approved.
Mr. Chairman, I understand why you've raised some of the questions you've raised about other people on the panel. I understand that. I don't come to any conclusions myself with respect to any of those. But I can only tell you that with respect to the one loan that we applied for, received, had nothing to do with any relationships with anyone in the administration, the White House. It was done. It was done on its merits.
How much money? What's the dollar amount of the interest you have in Ammonix? You know?
It's less than $10 million, I believe.
Okay. I mean, it's still real money. Most tax.
No, but in relation to, I guess my point is in relationship to $116 million that we're putting on the line for this project.
9%. Pretty significant. 10 million out of 116 is still pretty significant.
It would be, I think, frankly, it would be completely imprudent for us to risk $116 million to protect 10. So with all due respect,
I'm not arguing with that fact. All I'm saying is, if you can get, if one of the four is the one you happen to have an interest in, all the better. You'll concede that, right?
If it happens by coincidence to be the case.
No, it's not by coincidence.
It's completely by coincidence.
No, you just told me the independent, the experts said it was the right thing to do.
Well, all I'm saying is that we had people, not only our own engineers, who were evaluating the technology and the cost, but the engineers that were advising the DOE and Public Service of Colorado itself all had to bless the same thing.
Okay. I thank the gentleman. We yield now for our final round of questioning to the gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Is that a general sigh of relief from the panel? I mean, you know what? I don't know this is uncomfortable for you. Mr. Mancini, I understand when you said we would never risk $116 million on such an imprudent project, right? I mean, and I get that.
I said we wouldn't risk $116 million to protect $10 million.
Okay. All right. How about the American taxpayers putting $15 billion at risk? Was that being prudent? Because I'm going to shift very quickly, because there's an old adage out there where I come from. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And obviously, there's another part to that. It's who knows you. So you may know a lot, and you may know some people, but the real defining answer to this is when that phone call goes to somebody that says, I need help or I need you to weigh in on this, some people say, tell them I'm not in, tell them I'm on another call. If it's somebody that you know, you say, put the call through. I'm just saying that for these 25 companies that were able to get through this feeding frenzy and cut through all these different navigations, somebody obviously appreciated the fact and knew who was on the other end of the phone. So having said that, Mr. Riggi, because we've really lost sight of what this was about, this whole program, if I understood it correctly, and I don't fault any of these people for taking advantage of a program that was out there that gave them money at very low rates, and why would you pay it back ahead of time? I mean, my gosh, that'd be stupid. You don't pay back loans that you don't owe a lot on. You pay back the ones where the heaviest weight are. So, I mean, everybody gets that. The ones you owe the most on, your credit cards, some of those ones are at 18%. You want to make sure you lower that principal in a hurry. You want to pay it all back and get it off your plate. But when you don't owe anything, where there's no big number on it, I understand why they don't do it. But at the end of the day, we were led to believe that if we invested all this money, there was going to be a return on this investment. And the return on this investment, that we were going to get people who were sitting at home, unable to find a job, and this great opportunity that was out there. was going to create these jobs. What was the number of jobs that was supposed to be created?
Well, originally, I think the claim made by the Department of Energy was that investing in green technology would, through this loan, would bring 5 million.
5 million jobs. 5 million. Do we know exactly what the number is?
Well, when I looked yesterday,
I mean, not the game numbers, not when you took a guy who was driving a bus that was powered.
So I mean, according to the Department of Energy, permanent jobs.
Yes.
Through the 1705. It comes down, and the permanent one, it comes down to 2,388 jobs.
So we invested, what was the total amount we invested?
Roughly $16 billion.
$16 billion.
Yeah.
That's with a B, billion.
Yeah. Well, so it's an exposure for taxpayer of 6.7 million. But really, I mean, this number is relatively meaningless. I mean, think about it this way. This is the taxpayer's exposure per job, but the reality is if the company defaults, right? I mean, there are no jobs created. This is what we saw with Solyndra, where, in fact, 538 million will have to be repaid by taxpayers in one way or another, and in the end, there were 0 job created.
So they get whipsawed. They get it in both ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand because, to me, this is not a Democrat or Republican situation. This is where we took American taxpayer money and we put it down on the green. Not the red or the black, but the green. And we spun the wheel and we said, you know what, I bet we're going to win on this, and I bet we're going to create 5 million jobs. So we put all that money, said put it on the green, because I know we're going to win. And at the end of the day, what did the American taxpayers win?
I think it comes down to the ability of the government to create jobs, and it can't. I mean, it can obviously paid for some jobs, but to create sustainable jobs that will sustain themselves when the government money is gone, the government can't do this.
Only sustainable jobs only come from the private sector.
Exactly. The private sector is the one that can actually sustain jobs and create economic growth, for that matter. And the private sector has been also pretty good at even leading the way on green energy.
Sure. Well, you know why. But this has been the most irresponsible waste of taxpayer money that I have seen in my lifetime. And I've been around for a little bit now, but it's just, to me, it's incredible that we can sit back and say, mission accomplished. This is ridiculous what we've done to the American taxpayer, and then continue to ask them, keep funding this, by the way, because I'm sure there is somewhere at the end of there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
If I may add something, I mean, I don't know whether it's the most irresponsible thing. I think the government does a lot of very irresponsible
Well, this is the one we're talking about today. So.
But, I mean, certainly but more importantly, there is something I don't quite understand, is how we can reconcile the idea that these projects are low risks, and at the same time, these projects could not have found funding for themselves. I mean, if they are actually low risk, if one of the conditions for the company to get money is to actually have secured a source, a customer, a secure customer for the next 20 years, I mean, it seems like a pretty safe bet. And why wouldn't a private company go ahead and fund this project? Moreover, I find it surprising that while some of the companies involved have had a hard time maybe finding funding and capital while the recession was going on and while European banks were in trouble, it does seem that it's also the same time where everyone in America is hurting, and it seems somewhat irresponsible to be asking taxpayers then to jump in to take that risk.
Well, you can actually do that when it's not your own money that's being risked. It's a very easy bet to make when it's not your money. And when it's your money, it's a much more difficult risk to take.
But, I mean, I do not understand if it's really low risks, which, I mean, well, I'm willing to.
You make a good point. It is hard to understand. There's reasons it's hard to understand because it doesn't make sense. It's not common sense to the average guy who goes out there, and the average girl goes out there every day that has to pay their own bills out of their own pocket. They have their own skin in the game. When they have to get their own nose, when their nose is one's getting bloodied, they know the difference. And whenever you can take money from somewhere out of your checkbook or out of your pocket and go ahead and put it at risk, that's an easy roll of the dice. When it's your own money that you took so long to earn, and it's hard to pay back, then it's a much tougher bet to make. We've just made a very, very easy bet using taxpayer dollars. So, Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I really appreciate you all being here. Listen, I don't credit you or discredit you for doing what you did, okay? It makes sense. It makes sense. It makes sense to you. Unfortunately, it doesn't make sense to taxpayers whose money was what was wagered, okay? Just as long as we clear the air on that. And I know this is difficult to sit here and listen to us, but I got to tell you, I don't represent me. I represent 705,687 people in western Pennsylvania, and they're not all Republicans. And they tell me all the time, you think you have a low approval rating, you ought to try and work with ours. It's very difficult. So I got to tell you, people have lost confidence. And the reason they've lost confidence, because we have shown them time and time again, we will risk their money anytime we have a chance. So thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
I thank the gentleman. I want to thank our ranking member, mostly thank our witnesses. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, just briefly. Within the closed system of the legislation that created 1705, you can make the argument, well, the program within that system and the way it was designed, that it's been successful. But I think that this committee has asked the right questions in raising the question about who the winners and losers are here. And when I heard the gentlelady from Mercatus speak about the fact that you have so many businesses out there, they're not getting access to capital. I mean, I know, and members of this committee know, that the Federal Reserve famously was giving money to big banks, and the big banks weren't turning around and loaning it to people. People in my district who had great credit ratings, who had been in business for 30 years or more, Mr. Chairman, and people who were stalwarts in their business communities, their credit dried up. So, we cannot be unmindful of the fact that we're designing systems here which do pick winners and losers. And, and I will go again to my friend Mr. Kelly. That has to be something we have to pay attention to. And when we get to some of the largest companies in America who have been able to get advantages that smaller companies couldn't, those are really important questions that are raised. With all due respect to the gentlemen who probably know more about putting finance deals together for energy than anybody, these are questions this committee has to raise, because there's a lot of people out there asking, hey, why not me? How come I didn't get in on this? How come they did, I didn't? What's the connections? And in this time in Washington where there's such suspicion on both sides of the aisle about where the money's coming from, why it's going there, why somebody gets a contract, why somebody doesn't get a contract, notwithstanding Mr. Mancini's comments about, well, there's no influence that was used there. Listen, Goldman Sachs is synonymous with influence over the government, and that's what we all feel here. So it's not like some big moment when you say, well, there was no influence. I heard giggles up here with no insult to you. It's just that's how we seem to figure this out. And, you don't have to be Matt Taibbi, who has studied Goldman Sachs pretty carefully, to understand that Goldman Sachs has a reputation around here of being able to have massive influence. So you're going to have to forgive the members of this committee for raising that question back at you. So have a lovely day. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. I want to thank our witnesses. I know it's not always the best experience, but you all did a great job. We appreciate you taking the time to be here and the work you're doing, and we will adjourn the committee.